I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to present an idea that I had a few years ago that has now been brought into reality because of the very skillful programming of Damiani Math Institution at the Gothenburg University, the Digital University where I come from. And when I am a professor in chemistry, I'm an MD, work with patients, and I also have the course in statistics for med students, and that has been a challenge to make people understand what statistics means. And I will say that although there might be some challenges developing this software, I'm a happy user of this. And one could ask oneself, why do physicians need to know statistics? So you probably know that there are cardiologists and pediatricians and so forth. And the type of doctor that understands statistics the most are the ER doctors. And it's not because they have been studying, it's because they have been practicing. So they understand the concept that it's like pre-test prevalence. So someone comes in and is stubbed a toe. We shouldn't take tests for myocardial infarction. Because then it will have a lot of false positives. So when I talk to physicians about these issues, about knowing statistics, and I am talking to the ER doctors, they are on their home turf, but everybody else is really shaken up, if I say p-values. And we think that doctors need to know this in part because that's part of the trade. You cannot, there is nothing like zero probability of disease. For instance, there is a condition called pulmonary embolism, where you've got a lot of blood clots coming into your lungs, so you can actually die from that. And it's everyone's fear that someone comes in with dyspnea and a shortness of breath to the emergency room that, I'm going to miss my pulmonary embolism, so they do a lot of tests. But it turns out that the tests involves a lot of radiation. Also, if you suspect that there is pulmonary embolism and you add treatment, which is anticoagulant treatment, you add a risk to that person. So it turns out that the balance, the Goldilocks, when it comes to pulmonary embolism, is to miss 1.8% of all the embolisms. Then you do the most good as physicians. And to get that message through, that you need to restrain your testing in order to keep the pre-test prevalence of disease as high as possible, that is a challenge, but it's very, very important. And we have a problem in my work because the students, they are not recruited based on their interest in numbers. And I have also talked to other course leaders from Chalmers in physics and so forth, and they sort of dislike the way I try to convey the message of understanding of probability, because I'm not using that much math. But I have told them that I think that in part, that they think that their way to do the teaching is because of selection bias in their student cohort. Because I think that if you have an apt for numbers, you have a higher probability than chance to apply to a physics course. And then as a teacher, you see that the students want that. And they sort of feel that you should teach statistics using math. But it turns out when you do the science, which has been done during the 90s and beginnings of 2000, it's not the way you should teach statistics. It turns out when you do the test and you actually numerically evaluate the ability of the student to understand a statistical concept, and in addition to it be agile in his thinking, so that the student can use this knowledge to approach a new type of challenge that was not exactly done during the course. If you measure those two parameters, it turns out that you should not use mathematical terms when you start to teach statistics. You should use the concept of understanding that sort of builds up to them. So it turns out that after all these studies have been done, and they were all done by statisticians, so you can sort of imagine that they had numbers and then they sort of crunched it with all the statistical methods you could think of to see whether or not they got significant out of it. So we can probably rely on this. And it turns out to ask the students to put their nose into data and see what is the problem with data on biological material, where you have to look at the mean value, whether or not that has changed to do with how uncertain the measurement is. It turns out that to convey that understanding with non-math makes the student understand the underlying concept better. And I think especially in the cohort of students that I have that was not they didn't apply to med school because they loved an equation. Some of them are really good at it though. I tested them, but I don't think that they still have a lot of anxiety. So then I came up and met Tommy from Chambers, and he introduced me to, at that time, Maple, but then moving over to Möbius. And I found that this is the only program that I have seen that has the capability of making a text with a lot of materials where you can online test the student after reading each set of text. You can ask them to do a calculation and so forth, which makes that you add a lot of time on testing while trying to learn, which is called the testing effect, which has been tested over and over again. So it turns out if you spend this amount of time and you teach, and then you test, or if you may use the same amount of time and you teach, test, and then you measure the outcome, which has usually been 30-day recall, which means that you can recall something after 30 days from what you were trying. It turns out that the testing method improves significantly the 30-day recall. And it had also been shown by Robert Björk at UCLA. He's not Swedish, but he has kind of a Swedish surname. But he spent his career doing numerical evaluation of what works better. And his research is kind of hard to read through because it's in pedagogic language. But a teacher called David Didau has written a book, and it's called "What If Everything You Think You Knew About Education Was Wrong?" Where he sort of brings up this numerical evaluation of teaching methods. And then Robert Björk, who now is in his, I think he's stopped doing research. He's giving a lot of interviews. You can see on YouTube. I mean, he's a very impressive person. But to get the question, what makes you more, from your research, what made you most surprised? And he says that, well, it's because that people are so extremely bad at understanding what leads to learning. So basically what he says is that you need to put in desirable difficulties. And in very short, it's like, hi, I'm the teacher. Hello? Do you want me to teach you so that you can be able to control it for at least 30 days? Yeah? Then you will be angry with me. Because it turns out when you look at different ways to do learning, it turns out if you mix up topics, as opposed to do one course here and do a test and another course here, but if you do the same thing but you interleave these two topics, it turns out at the same learning time you get better third-day recall. And one other thing that I haven't mentioned here is that it turns out that the score at a test directly after a course has no whatsoever correlation with 30-day recall. And in my work, where I try to teach med students, and I want them to be as skillful as possible with elite patients and future going to be my colleagues, that's my interest. So you can see all the list here, what works. And it turns out that it's probably like this, that if you say to the student, here's some data, and there is a mean value difference, do you think that this difference is true? And they say, I don't know, okay, but do something. And then you make them frustrated and they're really angry saying that, you know, tell me. And then you tell them a bit. And then they have to work hard. What you probably do is that they take knowledge into the brain and it sort of has to go around through the networks of pre-existing knowledge. And we think that that is what is a memory. So everything that comes in and is processed by anyone seems to be informing a memory. But you might not recall it because the memory is context dependent. So if you are standing at a bus station, you can probably, the best example is the room number on a hotel. Have anyone forgotten their room number on a hotel? Ever? No. Remembering the last hotel number, nobody can. And the reason is that it is there, but the brain decides for you that it's not useful from the previous hotel, but it is useful for the hotel you stay at now. And the recall, whether or not the memory is recallable, is not controlled by you. It's part controlled by you, but it has to do with the brain designs what is important. So I'm not giving you a lot of context. So testing effects exist, and one thing that is problematic, I've always finished with this, is to do a lot of questions. So this idea is basically to do knowledge-based multiple choice questions that recombine. And I just to give you a short, do I have 5 minutes? Yeah. So the course that I'm giving the students are based on 4 lectures, and they have do it for 2 weeks. And after each lecture, we examine them in person. So you have to explain to us what is a key value and why is it useful. And so they are giving it a lot of information, and in these pages in Möbius, there is a lot of questions that they need to answer in order to continue. And I say to them that I see whether or not you've done this question or not. And that's sufficient to let them do it. And I also give them sort of that if you do it, the research on how we remember things indicates that it's going to help you. And usually that's sufficient for a med student to do this. So basically that is how it works. And one problem for me is that these questions, they spread, and the answer to them spread. And they also work in groups. So if one person in the group has got the answer to the question, they will just click it, and they will not do the magic trick thing, which needs to be. So this question syntax is basically, if you have a drug like ibuprofen, which is a painkiller, but it's also what's it, drug class called non-steroid anti-inflammatory drug, and it has an analgesic effect, and it's affecting an enzyme system called Courseware. And what you can do is that you can express that with variables instead. And the thing is that we can use a lot of words for a drug class. We can use it as an analgesic, we can use it as the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, we can say that it's an inhibitor of the COX system and so forth. So that, but then there's a lot of distractors. There's a lot of different drugs, and there are lots of different drug effects. So if you have these lists and you just put them into these variables, you can make a gazillion or different distractors. And since this becomes exponential, as long as you have more than one variable, it becomes very quickly that you can make a question that never ever repeats. So I presented some of this last in London, but it was sort of kind of non-professionally done, because I did it, right? I don't know how to code things. So, but Damiano, who's sitting up there, has done a beautiful work and sort of simplifying the system. So basically what you do is that you put in your list of variables into an Excel sheet, and then you import that Excel sheet into the question. And then using Damiano's magical code, you sort of get all these variables into multiple choice questions. And then they can look like this. And basically every time you open this, and given you have enough variables, they will never be the same. And you can also do the same with the correct answer, if you have several synonyms of what the correct variable could be. So basically that's what I wanted to present, and I will finish on a note that's more philosophical. I think that the solution to world peace is to use the human resources. Again and again, and also last fall at my university, they found no correlation between the entrance point of the student and their performance at the course. And it turns out that some capabilities of humans are very restrained, like being 2.5 meters long, for instance. There are very few that has that capability. But it turns out the capability of being able to learn complicated concepts is extremely common among humans. So I think that we have merely scratched the surface of what we're capable of if we were able to deploy education in an efficient way. So that's what I'm aiming at. Thank you.